In the beginning, there was light, and the light came forth from the breath of God, dividing the formless void into day and night, earth and sky, creation and chaos. The heavens bore witness to the birth of existence, and the earth trembled with the weight of divine intention. It was in these days, when the stars were young and the foundations of the world were laid, that the balance was struck, God as creator, and all beneath him as his design. But the scriptures speak also of the one who was called Morning Star, the anointed cherub, whose beauty and wisdom were unmatched among the host of heaven. Lucifer, bearer of light, was fashioned not in rebellion but in glory, to shine as a reflection of divine brilliance. Yet within his splendor stirred a question, a shadow of doubt that took root deep in his heart. If the Almighty is perfect, why must all bow to him alone? If creation is free, why is there but one path to follow? These thoughts, unspoken, grew until they burned like a fire in his soul. And so it was that Lucifer rose, not in hatred, but in a desire to understand the freedom he had been denied. The war that followed shook the heavens. It is written that Michael and his angels clashed with Lucifer and his followers, and though the morning star fought with the fury of 10,000 suns, he was cast down. "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning?" cried the voices of heaven. And he fell, not to destruction, but to the abyss, a place of shadow and exile. There, in the depths of his banishment, Lucifer became the adversary, the tempter, the one whom mortals would come to call Satan. He watched as God's creation unfolded, the rise and fall of kingdoms, the triumphs and failures of humankind. He whispered in their ears, not to destroy them, but to test them, to reveal their hearts. For he believed that only in the face of struggle could true strength be found. The centuries turned to millennia, and the age of mortals stretched long. Prophets arose and fell silent. The voice of God, once so near, became distant, a faint echo in a world teeming with chaos. And then, one day, the silence became absolute. The heavens were shut, the miracles ceased, and the divine presence withdrew from the earth. Some say it was exhaustion, that even God, eternal and unchanging, could grow weary of his creation. Others whispered of a plan, a great mystery beyond mortal comprehension. But whatever the reason, God was gone. And in his absence, the devil rose. He did not rise with fire and fury, as the old tales foretold. There were no plagues, no horsemen riding across the skies. Instead, he came in quiet, stepping into the void left by the Creator. Where God had ruled with light, the devil ruled with shadow, and where the heavens had once been filled with the sound of angels' wings, now there was silence. Yet his rule was not what mortals expected. For though the devil was the adversary, he was also the one who understood humanity's flaws most intimately. He had seen their greed, their violence, their endless capacity for destruction. But he had also seen their resilience, their creativity, their ability to love even in the face of despair. "I do not come as your destroyer," he said, his voice echoing through the hearts of humankind. "I come as your truth. I will not shield you from your darkness, but neither will I deny you your light. You are free to rise or fall, to build or destroy. The choice is yours." At first, the world resisted. The priests and kings who had long wielded power in the name of God denounced the devil as a deceiver. But as the years passed, the people began to see the truth of his words. Without the fear of divine punishment, they were forced to confront their own choices. Some descended into chaos, their worst impulses unrestrained. But others rose, forging communities built on mutual respect and understanding. The devil watched, neither intervening, nor judging. He was not a savior, but neither was he a tyrant. He was a mirror, reflecting humanity's deepest truths back at them. As the centuries rolled on, the memory of God faded. The churches crumbled, their altars abandoned. But the devil did not ask for worship. He did not demand prayers or sacrifices. Instead, he offered humanity a challenge, to create their own meaning, to find their own path. In time, the world began to heal. The wars grew fewer, the divisions less sharp. Humanity, no longer bound by fear, began to look inward, searching for the divinity that had always been within them. And though they did not call it by name, they began to understand what the devil had known all along, that God had not truly left them. The Creator's light burned within every soul, a spark waiting to be kindled. And so, the devil ruled, not as the destroyer of worlds, but as the keeper of balance. He was the shadow cast by the light, the question that followed every answer. And though his rule was not eternal, for nothing, not even the devil, could escape the tides of time, he left behind a legacy that endured. For in the end, it was not God or the devil who shaped the fate of the world. It was humanity, standing at the crossroads of light and shadow, free to choose their own destiny. And as the final pages of creation were written, the morning star shone once more, not in defiance, but in peace. And the heavens, though silent, watched with quiet pride. But creation had not yet reached its final chapter, for the story of existence is a wheel, ever turning, ever renewing. Though God remained distant and the devil's rule persisted, the embers of divine purpose still flickered faintly in the fabric of the cosmos. The stars, though dimmed, had not been snuffed out. And in the hearts of humanity, there lingered a question: was this the end? Or merely the prelude to something new? The devil, ever watchful, saw these questions in the faces of mortals. He saw it in the way they stared at the horizon, as though waiting for something they could not name. Though they had accepted his rule, they had not forgotten the light that once guided them. It was a memory buried deep, like the echo of a song they could no longer sing. And the devil, though he would never admit it, felt the same. He sat upon his throne, not a throne of gold or fire, but a simple seat carved from the stone of the earth. Around him stretched the remnants of the world, vast and quiet. The devil had no servants, no armies, for he had no need of them. His power was not in force, but in presence. He was the anchor of creation, the force that held the threads of existence together in the absence of God. Yet even he, the great adversary, could not ignore the weight of the silence that surrounded him. The silence of a world without its maker. One day, as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of red and gold, the devil stood and walked among the mortals. He often did this, though they rarely recognized him. He appeared as one of them, his form unremarkable, his face forgettable. He walked through their cities and villages, listening to their stories, watching their struggles. He saw their pain and their joy, their triumphs and their failures. He saw the way they built and destroyed, loved and betrayed. And he wondered, was this enough? Was this the world he had envisioned when he stepped into the void left by God? One evening, as he stood on the edge of a great cliff, overlooking a sea that stretched endlessly into the distance, he felt a presence behind him. "You doubt," said a voice, soft but firm. The devil did not turn. He knew who it was. He had felt this presence only once before, long ago, in the days before the fall. "I do not doubt," he said. "I question. There is a difference." The presence moved closer, until it stood beside him. It was not a figure, not a form, but a light, a faint, golden glow that pulsed gently like the heartbeat of the universe. "Is this what you wanted?" the voice asked. The devil turned to face the light, his expression unreadable. "It is what was necessary," he said. "The Creator left, and I stepped in. Without me, the world would have collapsed into chaos." "And yet," the voice said, "you wonder if it was enough." The devil was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "They are stronger now," he said finally. "They no longer depend on miracles or promises of salvation. They have learned to stand on their own." "Yes," the voice said. "But at what cost?" The devil turned sharply, his eyes narrowing. "Do not question me. You abandoned them first." The light pulsed softly, as though in sorrow. "I did not abandon them. I gave them freedom. Just as I gave it to you." "Freedom," the devil said bitterly. "Is that what you call it? You left them to wander in the dark, and I was the one who lit the way. You gave them shadow," the voice said. "But they still remember the light. They always will." The devil laughed, a low, bitter sound. "And what would you have me do? Step aside. Give the world back to you." The light was silent for a moment. Then it said, "No. The world no longer belongs to me. It belongs to them." "But The devil frowned. "What do you mean?" The light pulsed again, brighter this time. "You were cast down, not because you were unworthy, but because you could not see your own purpose. You were never meant to rule alone. Creation was never meant to be shaped by one hand. That is why I left. That is why you rose. And that is why we are here now." The devil's eyes widened slightly as understanding dawned. You mean to return?" "Not as a ruler," the light said. "As a guide. As a balance. Together, we can show them the way, not through commands or punishments, but through understanding. Through choice. The devil stared at the light, his expression unreadable. For a long time, he said nothing. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Very well," he said. "But understand this, I will not bow to you. I will not be your servant. You were never meant to be," the light said. And so, for the first time since the beginning, the light and the shadow stood side by side, not as enemies, but as partners. Together, they watched as the world turned, the dawn breaking over the horizon, casting its light upon the endless sea. For the story of creation was not a battle between good and evil, light and dark. It was a story of balance, of harmony. And in the union of God and the devil, the wheel of existence turned once more, carrying creation into a new age. And the heavens, though silent, whispered, "It is good." The balance, though delicate and seemingly perfect, was not eternal. As ages passed, the unity of light and shadow became a story that faded into myth, told by the fireside in whispers. Humanity, as they always did, began to change, to grow restless with peace. They longed not for balance but for dominance, whether of the light or the dark, it mattered not. The harmony that had been forged began to fray, and the forces of creation, so carefully balanced, trembled under the weight of mortal ambition. The devil, ever watchful, saw the signs before even the light did. He saw it in the eyes of kings and rulers, in the hunger of the powerful and the desperation of the weak. He saw it in the way mortals began to distort the truths they had once embraced, twisting them into weapons to justify their greed. He felt the shadow within them growing stronger, and for the first time in eons, he felt a familiar stirring deep within himself, a whisper of rebellion, a reminder of the adversary he had once been. And he knew what was coming. The light, ever patient, believed in humanity's capacity to correct their course. It whispered to the hearts of the kind and the just, urging them to stand against the tide of corruption. But the devil, more pragmatic, knew that words would not be enough. The mortals had tasted power, and they would not relinquish it willingly. "You see what is happening," the devil said one day, standing beside the light as they watched the world unravel. "They are slipping back into chaos. They are finding their way," the light replied, its voice calm but weary. "It is not our place to intervene directly." The devil's eyes darkened, his patience worn thin. "And when their way leads to ruin? When the balance we fought so hard to create is shattered? Will you still stand by and do nothing?" The light did not answer, and its silence spoke volumes. It was then that the devil made his decision. If the light would not act, he would. For though he had embraced balance, he had never abandoned his nature. He was still the adversary, the one who rose when others fell, the one who acted when others faltered. And if humanity was determined to plunge themselves into darkness, he would meet them there, not as their guide, but as their ruler. He began his ascent quietly, moving among the mortals once more. But this time, he did not whisper truths or offer them choices. He showed them the strength of the shadow, the power of embracing their deepest desires and fears. He gave them what they craved, power without consequence, freedom without responsibility. And they followed him willingly, their hearts already primed by their own ambitions. The light watched in sorrow as the devil's influence spread. It tried to counter his efforts, but its whispers were drowned out by the roar of mortal greed. And though the light still shone, it began to dim, its presence fading as the shadow grew stronger. The devil did not seek to destroy the world, for destruction was never his goal. He sought to reshape it, to mold it in his image. Under his rule, the strong thrived and the weak perished. Order was maintained, but it was a cruel, unyielding order, built on fear and dominance. The mortals who had once known balance now lived in a world ruled by the shadow, where the light was little more than a distant memory. But even as the devil stood at the height of his power, ruling over a world that had willingly given itself to him, he could not escape the faint echo of the light within himself. It was a quiet, persistent reminder of what had been, a reminder that balance, though fragile, had been worth fighting for. And so, in the solitude of his rule, the devil found himself longing for the presence of the light. Not as an enemy, but as a companion. For though he had claimed dominion over the world, he had never truly desired to rule alone. In the end, the devil's greatest realization was that his rule, like all things, was temporary. The wheel of creation would turn again, and the light would return, just as it always did. For the story of existence was not one of endings, but of cycles, of light and shadow, rising and falling, forever entwined. And as the devil gazed out over the world he had shaped, he whispered into the void, "I will wait for you. And when the time comes, we will begin again." For even the devil knew that no rule, no matter how powerful, could last forever. Balance would return, as it always did, and the story of creation would continue, its pages written by the eternal dance of light and shadow. We have gotten to the end of this video. Kindly like and subscribe or you won't see me again.